Yeah, it could be a lot of things. Like they're still good, but not their best. I was gonna like get closer now. It feels like I'm just lagging behind. Ah, maybe. Okay. Alright, I blocked him. I don't know if I can ban the guy, but yeah, dude, my aim is shit right now. Honestly, it could be that. I feel like I'm reacting too fast there. Yikers. Oh, why did I get like 3 messages but no one messaged me? Makes sense. Huh? This is horrible. I'm so not used to this sense at all, bro. That was horrible. Yeah, I need to relax. I'm pinching right in here, dude. Okay. I fucking suck at this. Jesus. Okay. I can. Yo, what's up, bro? This sense is so fucking quite good. Such a shit score, bro. Fucking hell. I need this exercise. Slide bounce, cracking, A plus easy. That's why I asked if you were good at sliding when you're sliding down hills. Really good for that. Bad, but I can do better. Yeah. Slide bounce, tracking, A plus easy. Oh my god. Plus back. Why is daytime Twitch, not YouTube? It's both. That was horrible.
Downstairs to look for her. "18-year-old Hannah Elizabeth
These are the videos of 6 adopted children given a vital second chance to flourish in their youth. And at face value, the actions of their new mothers, Jennifer and Sarah Hart, seemed to be profoundly kind. But behind these videos, along with a never-ending stream of positive social media, lay 2 monsters upholding a grim and ugly facade. And this story would ultimately lead to mass tragedy. Welcome back to Coffee House Crime. My name is Adrian, and in today's video we're looking at the deceptive case of the Hart family. The Harts seem to be a progressive family living a holistic lifestyle surrounded by love, happiness and freedom. But was this an accurate reflection, or just an evil facade? Just so you know, I post solved, unsolved and strange cases here on a weekly basis, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing to Coffee House Crime. So let's dive straight into today's case. Pull up a seat, grab a coffee and sit back. This is the heartbreaking case of the Hart family massacre. Today, we head into the northern region of the United States, to the seldom populated state of South Dakota. Found in the heart of mainland America, South Dakota is expansive, with wide open prairies, the Badlands National Park, and incredible natural beauty. This makes hunting, hiking, and fishing very popular activities amongst South Dakota's residents, all the same for tourists looking to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. And it's here in small-town South Dakota that we're introduced to Jennifer Hart and Sarah Gengler. Jen came from the city of Huron, where Sarah grew up just outside of Big Stone City. I say city, but Big Stone City has around 500 residents, the same capacity to fill an Airbus A380. The two had very similar upbringings. They were the oldest sibling in their families, brought up in a rural area, and graduated high school at a respectable level. And these similarities between the two grew, as they both decided to pursue higher education and go to university. They both wanted to become school teachers, although Sarah decided to focus on special education. And whether by coincidence or fate, the two also ended up transferring from former universities to Northern State University, found in Aberdeen, South Dakota. This meant that in 1999, Jennifer and Sarah met each other while studying the same course. And very little did either of them know that this would progress from classmates, to friends, to a romantic relationship. Now, South Dakota was not the most open-minded of states in the 90s. And especially seeing as both women had grown up rurally, they felt that they couldn't express their relationship in public. So, Jen and Sarah began their relationship in secret, telling those close to them that they were merely good friends. Unfortunately, Jen ended up dropping out of university before completing her course, but on the other hand, Sarah persevered, and eventually earned her degree in special education. It was after her graduation that Jen and Sarah decided their relationship could no longer be covert, thus leading them to coming out to their family and friends. The couple knew that some of them would have an issue with this, and they actually ended up losing a good number of friends as a result. And so, following graduation and a public relationship, the ever-transforming couple moved to Alexandria, located in Minnesota, a city famous for its lakeside lifestyle. The couple gained work at the biggest department store in town, and while Sarah progressed to management, Jen stayed in the junior section. Their time at work was rather uneventful. Sarah was more level and reserved, whereas Jen was described by those working with her as bold, brash, and considered rather abrasive. However, yin and yang, the two seemed to pull into each other's strengths and weaknesses, creating a balanced partnership. Jen and Sarah lived and worked together, and by the mid-20s they felt that their lives had started to lose its flavour, which in response led them to look elsewhere for satisfaction. The couple therefore decided to apply for adoption eligibility, which can be a wonderful opportunity and a blessing for most. As it turns out, Jen and Sarah qualified, with thanks to them being in the prime of their lives, employed and educated. And so, in 2014, they took a 15-year-old foster daughter under their wing, who they were to look after until she turned 18 and could strike out on her own. Their new daughter's name was Lee. The first few months with their new daughter was pleasant, and Jen and Sarah would take Lee out on many adventures. They would often go camping, to amusement parks, and to various local events and celebrations. However, around 6 months after adopting Lee, those around the family began to notice how the couple would constantly complain about the young girl, often sneering at her habits, attitude and interests. And apparently, it seemed as if the young couple were not taking their role as foster parents seriously. They even went as far to tell colleagues and co-workers that the new foster daughter had a bad habit of picking food out the trash to eat it. Which, if you ask me, says more about them as parents rather than the child they were supposed to be caring for. Although the novelty of fostering seemed to be wearing off for the couple, the small family of 3 would eventually welcome 2 new additions to the family, a younger brother and sister. They were also planning to adopt a fourth child from a pregnant mother once they were born. After returning home from initial visitation, Jen and Sarah showed pictures of the children to Lee. The couple were very enthusiastic, but Lee's excitement seemed to be all for naught. And just 1 week later, Lee was dropped off for what she thought was a routine therapist appointment. But when she got there, she was told that Jen and Sarah were not coming back to get her. There was no goodbye and no explanation to this decision. They'd abandoned the young girl once again, entirely ripping her out from a stable environment. In the year 2006, 2 years after sending Lee back to the foster care system, they officially adopted 3 new children. They were 2-year-old Abigail, 4-year-old Hannah, and 7-year-old Marcus. Statistically, these children were part of several categories that made them more difficult to place in care, as sadly, race plays a big part in succession rates when it comes to foster care. Their terms and conditions meant that they also had to be adopted together, which in turn made them harder to house. Now, this is where Jen Hart began to regularly post on Facebook. She documented their first night as a family of 5, which surprisingly included accidents of urination, pooping on the walls, a tumble, and even the need for the Heimlich maneuver. This all sounded very hectic for a first night, and although Jen expressed that the children were unruly, misbehaved and troubled, she insisted that her and her partner were committed to healing the children over time, stating, "If not us, who will?" And although raising 3 children was obviously a challenge, just 2 years later, Jen and Sarah were once again looking for more children to adopt. This application was eventually approved, and in the spring of 2008, the couple were given 3 more young children. They were 5-year-old Devont, 4-year-old Jeremiah, and 3-year-old Sierra. With the introduction of 3 new family members came complications, as now cracks started to form within the family's dynamics. Later that year, the couple would be called into school over abuse allegations, as Hannah had shown up to classes with bruising on her legs, and when asked by one of her teachers, she told her that one of her mothers had hit her with a belt. Jen and Sarah claimed ignorance, and perhaps maybe she was bruised while playing. As a result, no charges were filed. Rather suspiciously, but all 3 children at school were then taken out of schooling not long after this incident, before finally being re-enrolled after social services were informed. After officially adopting the final 3 children, Jen frequently took to social media in order to show the world of the rather unconventional family, which now consisted of 2 white lesbian mothers and 6 black children. Sarah stayed in retail to support the family, and all in the meanwhile Jen stayed at home with the kids, often taking them out and away to what Jen described as transformation festivals, events of music, dance, yoga and other activities which could last for several days. This change in lifestyle led the family to relocate from Minnesota to Oregon in the year 2013, where they could now focus on a community that accepted them and be close to their favourite musicians. Soon after moving, Jen and Sarah finally married, taking Jennifer's last name Hart for Sarah and the children. And it's from here that Jen's carefully curated online feed exploded with posts about her family. She would post pictures of them at festivals, in their garden, looking after the house and other activities. Jen's posts were overwhelmingly holistic and based around the values of love, acceptance and community. And the family would often be seen going to festivals, rallies and even protests. Jen posted as if they were a perfectly progressive, happy family, and it raked in the likes. When it came to the hearts, the general public attitude was always centered around the 2 mothers saving their adopted children, and of course, that they were the perfect family. This performative behaviour is best displayed in a video from the Beloved Festival in 2013, where Devont sported his free hug sign and got on stage to give the performer an emotional embrace, in front of a large crowd. However, offline government files began to paint a very different picture. The school began to notice bruises on these children, and they would also tell teachers they were locked indoors and left without food, leading them to steal from other children. Abigail also claimed that Jen had accused her of stealing and punished her by dunking her head in cold water, before striking her with the back of her hand. But before any thorough investigation could be conducted, all 6 children were removed from school and the family officially began homeschooling instead. Shortly after this, whistleblowers around the family started contacting Child Protection Services. They claimed that Jen ran the family like a boot camp and that the children seemed to fear her. And a very twisted detail, but Jen supposedly withheld food from the children, only rewarding them if they posed her Facebook photos, or as she asked. Photographers that worked with the Harts often described how when taking photos, the children were smiling and seemingly happy, but as soon as the session was over, they'd go back to being miserable and lifeless. The CPS would eventually interview these children about their home life, and although these interviews were independent, they all gave strangely similar accounts, all of which denied any abuse taking place. It was now becoming a possibility that the life Jen had posted about online was a complete fabrication, and those close to the family were now starting to see that. Public attention to the family came in 2014, when this image of Devont went viral. He would become known as the boy who hugged a police officer at a Black Lives Matter protest, and it gained so much attention that it was eventually featured on several news channels and Saturday Night Live. Jen always wanted attention. That was plain to see through her social media. But eventually, her accounts would go radio silent in 2016, only to return in 2017 to claim that those around them didn't understand their alternative and progressive lifestyle. In their hiatus, they decided to move to Woodland in Washington. It was a convenient time for them to do so, as things were heating up with the CPS. They therefore moved silently not to alert them. They would eventually find a spacious 2-floor farmhouse in Washington countryside, and Jen's Facebook posts would resume after this. Images of the children started to resurface, and Jen was trying to return to her previous attention-seeking updates. However, behind the scenes, the abuse was still happening. So much so that in the middle of a warm night in July, 15-year-old Hannah Hart jumped out from her bedroom window and ran to a neighbour's house. Dana and Bruce DeCobb were awoken by a distressed child at their door. She begged for food and pleaded not to go back home. And not long after this, they could hear the rest of the Hart family calling for her. And of course, not to be surprised, Jennifer explained Hannah's behaviour away, claiming that she was lying for attention. Very shortly after this, the CPS were called over the situation.
Yeah, there's some kids that I feel is being highly abused. Okay, I'm going to give you the address of my daughter's house because it's right next door.
Okay, what's going on there?
The other night, a little girl jumped out of the second-story window on the roof and then down onto the ground and ran to my daughter, and this is like 2 in the morning, begging them to help her. And when they came looking for her, she was begging my daughter not to let them know she was there. And then eventually my son-in-law let him know. And then she had all 4 of the kids come back later and to say everything was okay, and they were all standing at attention like they were just scared to death. And I think there's something very serious going on there. I'm very concerned for these kids.
The very next day, the DeCobbs received an apology letter which was supposedly written by Hannah. However, the wording and terminology used doesn't quite reflect that of a 15-year-old girl. The DeCobbs didn't want to get involved in any neighbourhood disputes, but this incident made Dana very uncomfortable, so as a direct consequence, she began to keep tabs on the family. Grounded children, incessantly shut blinds, and a very distinct lack of food and malnourishment were all recorded in her diary. And very shortly after this, the next child to knock on their door was Devont, and he was more coherent and subtle with his wording. Asking the DeCobbs for food, he requested if they could place a care package at the edge of their property, and out of sight of his parents. He also admitted that Hannah's claims were true, and he wanted the family to call social services. Social health services were deeply concerned, and on March 23, 2018, they responded by marching to the family residence. However, after arriving, there was no answer at the door. Coming back 3 days later, more concerning details arose. The driveway was now empty, the family truck no longer visible, and debris and cinder blocks were scattered across the driveway, the result of their car driving through a small wall. It appeared that the family had left in a hurry. Dana had a sinking feeling about this. She knew why they were running, that was obvious. But despite her suspicions, she was not prepared for the events which followed. 2 days prior, on March 24, 2018, Sarah and Jen ushered their 6 adopted children into the family truck. They explained to them that they were going on a road trip, and although they did this often, it was never so abruptly. Jen Hart took to the driver's seat of the car, and seconds later drove the family away in a hurry, this resulting in her smashing through the wall in the process. Contrary to her usual gloating, there were no posts online about their road trip, but their phones would ping at multiple towers along coastal roads, heading south as they left Washington, passed through Oregon, and then entered California. Along the way, they stopped at a service station to buy food, and with the kids kept inside the car at all times, they were never spotted at any of these stations. On March the 25th, the day before CPS returned to their now empty house, a surveillance camera captured Jennifer at a Safeway. The couple eventually stopped at a Walmart in California, where Sarah bought a large bottle of Benadryl, an antihistamine with strong side effects such as drowsiness. Sarah then returned to the car, and while preparing food for the family, she slipped Benadryl into their sandwiches. 19-year-old Marcus receiving the highest dosage of around 20 pills. And all in the meanwhile, Jen was drinking several beers. This was
Okay, I
out of
gotta fix
character.
that.
She didn't drink often, but today was evidently different. With the children now deceptively fed, Sarah and Jen returned to their seats. Jen behind the wheel after around 5 drinks, with Sarah scrolling away on her phone. The family left Walmart in the early hours of March the 26th, and took off along the coast once again. And during this time, Sarah was on her phone searching for answers to questions like, how much Benadryl would it take to kill a 130-pound woman? How long does it take to die of drowning and hypothermia? And does it hurt to die? Following these searches, Sarah herself consumed 42 pills of Benadryl, and driving further along the coast, the family stopped at a cliff near Westport, California, the children still in the back of the car without seatbelts, drowsy and delirious. The family truck stopped, but only for a brief minute. And as the atmosphere around settled into quietness, Jen ruptured the silence as she put her foot on the gas pedal, accelerating